Let's welcome our speakers. Chela, would you like to go first and introduce yourself?
Yeah. So hi everyone, I am Chela. I am a Colombian product designer. I currently live in Austin, Texas, and I work as a senior product designer on the design system team at realtor.com. I've been there for almost 3 months, and my focus is not only design systems but accessibility as well. I have been designing over a decade, and I have been in different design fields like graphic, motion, and UX. But I ended up focusing on design systems because I'm obsessed with little details that no one really notices. And that's what design systems are all about. So I really like to call myself like design systems or accessibility nerd because I do love this kind of topics.
Love it, love it. Thank you. Robin, would you like to go next?
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. My name is Robin. I am a UX designer, working as a designer since 2009, and I got into design systems around 2016. First as a consumer, and later I moved on into a core design system team as UX lead. And yeah, I've been passionate about design systems and the fusion between design and development. I have a design background, but also like a bit of technical background from my bachelor studies. And so I like design systems because they merge these two worlds. And yeah, I'm very passionate about the community and the events and all that goes on this space. I think is very lively and community is very open. So happy to be here.
Thank you for sharing your story. Jeremy, would you like to go next?
Hello, everybody. I'm Jeremy. I'm a lead product designer at the Walt Disney Company, specifically within Disney streaming. I've been here about 3 years, but systems to me, I got started, I think it was 2014, playing with material design on the Google Analytics team, which was a lot of fun as a production designer. And then I built my first library in Sketch back in the day at Airbnb, and then pivoted into learning more about the systems space, learning about contribution and adoption and engagement at Lyft, and trying to do that here at Disney. And super excited for this just because I've learned throughout the years that teaching and learning about systems is really about talking about it. We all have similar problems we would try to solve, and learning from the people doing it and sharing our stories is like the best way to bring that back to your own work and apply. I know I learn a lot from these as well, so super excited to be here.
Love it. Great. Thank you for joining. And my name is Farid. You all know me. I'm hosting the session today. So let me pull some materials from our secret board, our speakers only board, into the FigJam. So here you will able to find some resources as well. So this is a quick part where we're just sharing a couple of theory, the way how to do the design system inventory. But let's dive deeper into documentation from eBay. So I would like to start. Let's start with eBay Design System Playbook. They have a lot of, and this is like the level of craft is top of the line. So they have a ton of things here documented, not only from design system perspective, but also from branding perspective. And if you will go into the getting started, you will see that they have foundations, design systems, press release, media kit. Again, like a lot of focus on the branding, not only on the design system. And this is great. Some of the things that we really like about is the system definitions. Like one of the example here is they are trying to unify the vocabulary, not across the components only, but also across the teams, having this kind of dictionary that can be shared across all departments. And when we talk about specific things like template, they have a quick definition with some examples here. They also have some interesting way how to separate private and public data through this auth wall. Jeremy, do you have any interesting thoughts or things that you really like about the eBay's playbook?
I think for me, the first is the name Playbook. It really kind of wraps your head around like all the things that may be kind of around. For me, I always look for systems, obviously, but being able to see all the branded stuff and very nuanced things about the logo. There's an email system in there as well that I really enjoyed because I have a friend who works in that space and building something, and having it available is really, really cool because it's not only content for designers, right, which but also engineers and PMs and of course us externally. And I'm a fan of open source, though all the places I've worked, we were unable to open source our stuff because again, learning from others helps kind of inform our work. But the playbook like mantra really hits home for me and just digging into this so much content. Like I could spend hours just reading and going through this.
Love it. Chella, do you have any interesting things about the eBay's playbook?
Yeah, I have a few things to note. First, I really love how much the site embodies their branding and marketing and their own design system. You can tell that they put a lot of effort and care into like the whole site. And the site is just not like functional, but is like really like expressive of eBay's identity. Like everything, like the colors, the typography, the graphics, motions. It's like really beautiful. It's just like a chef's kiss experience. Another thing I noticed is that they let the user decide how to view and digest the content. It gives options like viewing information like in grids or like or in list. You can just also toggle between light or dark mode, and it just like makes the design system side not only like a reference tool but also a piece of brand and storytelling.
Love it.
Oh yeah, and then I love that you put that because I also love how accessibility is clearly a priority for them. They don't only have a page dedicated to accessibility, but every component page has their dedicated accessibility guidance side by side with the design and code. You can see that accessibility is not an afterthought for them. It's not something to check off a list. It's a core principle of their system, and it's built into all of their foundationals and components automatically.
And do you have any interesting maybe libraries on Figma? Like we can see that they put a lot of work into these visual annotations on top of the designs as well. So like do people do that manually? Like do you have any like practices or maybe libraries that people can use in order to create this kind of annotations like this?
Yeah, actually, thank you for saying that because they do have like amazing accessibility resources they have. So like all of these annotations that you have see is here is like a Figma plugin. It's yeah, it's like a Figma plugin is like really, really amazing. And it's called Include. It's like a plugin that lets you annotate everything from the design side. Yeah, like you can annotate alt text or like focus rating order, like literally everything you can do. And it's like really easy for designers to just like have that plugin and annotate everything in their designs. And they also have like this eBay mind patterns open source where you can like literally see like how they have all of the accessibility baked into like the components and their patterns, and it's just like really, really great.
Love it. So eBay mind patterns, this is like another playbook related to the accessibility. Do you believe it could be a good combination to merge it with the design system, or maybe it's like another team working on that, so that's why they didn't like merge it yet, but in the future there might be.
Yeah, and I think like one thing about documentation is that if you do have a lot of documentation into one page, what's happening is that people are not gonna read it. And so I actually like that they separated these two things. So you have guidance on the components, on a very high level accessibility guidance. But if you want to go deeper and really understand and know how to actually apply accessibility to the code or dive deeper, you can just go to that side and learn more.
Love it. Yeah, they have like a separate website for called mind patterns. This is really great, and they have a lot of things on accessibility part, but it might be outdated, and I can see that some of the things are coming from iOS, I guess. But yeah, this is great. And for the resources, right? It's not only that, they have a lot of things here. Like they have Evo Toolkit plugin, design pre-flight checklist widget, a Lingo plugin, data populate plugin. They have a lot of things when it comes to, I guess, Figma or maybe some tools for engineers as well. So yeah,
Yeah, that's amazing.
It just
Robin,
helps kind of like the as a mantra for us as systems designers is like make things more efficient and remove obstacles from a designer's workflow. And having tools like this in this space that they're always in 24/7, it's just like you don't have to think about it, because I know I have a color contrast plugin that I like that's on my Mac, but there's a bunch of these. And so not having to like dig through that, and these are the recommended ones from the systems team, amazing. That lets designers move forward much quicker.
Love it. Yeah. Robin, do you have any interesting thoughts about eBay's playbook?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, maybe coming back to something that Jeremy said before, like the name playbook is oftentimes used by leadership when they talk about strategic topics. And I think that says something about the way probably eBay wants to place Evo, like as a strategic tool, not like just a component library. And I think if we look at the page, like I think we discussed about the fact that they market this tool, this playbook to the company. There is the article section that explains how the project came to be. They show the story of the whole initiative. And they also show the status of different things. So like one can see that some like patterns or components are not yet done, but you can already see they are coming. I really like how they merge the branding aspect into something that seems strategic. And also it's interesting that they have the section foundations separate from the design system section, as if to hint that the foundations are not just for maybe the digital aspect, but also for other things. And there were those examples of branding elements used for merchandise and stuff like that. So they really want to cover many things. And like I said, seems to be placed as a strategic tool. And yeah, it's obvious that they put a lot of effort, and it's a journey. It's something that is not done, but it seems to be something that they will work on, or they plan to work on for a long period of time. So through the years.
Love it. So do you believe this is a new movement within the design system industry that, again, we spoke about that on the last week, where Gen AI and accessibility, they are like these new drivers where we are pushing the limits of the design system. We are not talking about only tokens and components and patterns. We're talking about the whole horizontal enablement. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. There have been many talks about the concept of design systems as infrastructure. Many people pointing out in articles, this is not just a component library. It's just a maturity aspect that companies start to see it as more than a component library. They want to place it more strategic. And I think the reason is that for big companies where they have many different products, different teams, they want some way to unify. In the eBay case, we saw when we were looking at their website and their app, they have many different sections. My guess is that the eBay playbook came about as an initiative to unify all this, but you have to do it in a more strategic way. It has to become a language for the company to implement across all teams. I think definitely that's a movement that shows a bit the maturity of the space.
Love it, love it. And they also have this expression section. I know that we spoke about that during the dry run. Someone highlighted that, yes, they are expanding and not only focusing on the digital, right, as Robin, you mentioned, but also social media. And the social is private, and this is great that they at least sharing that, but saying like, okay, this is private stuff. But they also have email design. I really like it. Really appreciate some of the design systems like Primer design system from GitHub, where they are also not only focusing on the web, but also focusing on even creating PowerPoint slides that are also unified, right? And the same foundations that we have as a part of like this web platform and other platforms as well. Let's dive deeper into their design system. They have tokens, components, patterns, and processes. Would we want to, let's dive deeper into the tokens. So any thoughts on the tokens, maybe some interesting practices that you would like to, oh, like this is a really good idea. I would like to save it for myself. I would like to introduce that to my team as well.
Yeah, I really like that from the color perspective. Like everything is baked in terms of high color contrast so that designers don't have to guess what color combinations are accessible or not. And so they exactly know what token to use for text on top of what background and all. So I think that's really nice of them.
Yeah, and another thing I liked also is that they mention how they came about their naming convention structure. They have like an image showing how they come about their naming the tokens. I guess the token structure, if you scroll a bit down, I think they show
Yeah,
it.
I think down.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
one, this
there you go.
table. under token structure. This one, I think this is interesting and useful that they don't just publish the tokens, but they show how they came about the naming, which can help then teams understanding how the tokens have been built and understanding the logic behind it. I think that was also very interesting.
Did
Yeah,
you feel like
this is key because
with
like I know naming's hard, and just having this table to talk through with all the stakeholders so everyone's on the same page is huge. And I think it's within their kind of theming of the playbook and like having things not just for one surface but multiple surfaces. And again, like Robin mentioned, multi-year kind of initiative, but like they're laying that foundation early here, and so everyone can refer back to this, and we've all been in those meetings with all the different stakeholders, and it's tough to get alignment, but like getting to the nitty gritty of like a table like that for naming, sometimes it'll take forever to get to that point, but they've done a really good job just showcasing that and then applying that, like Jella said. So
love it. So this is like two different dimensions, right? For the token structure, they are talking about the way how they can structure the tokens, but this is the way how everything goes from the raw values to core tokens to semantic tokens to component tokens, right? And when it comes to the naming convention, for example, for the component or semantic token, they are using this token structure as like a place to came up with the name itself, right?
Not sure.
I didn't double check this, but I would go on a hunch, maybe not, if they released this already.
Yeah, but this is like a real like I will save this for myself personally because this is a really good visual explanation of how things are working, and also their token structure is very well defined. I really like this modifier part where you can also like have this variant, state, scale, and context. So this is great. Love. Okay, let's move to the next section. Um, it's interesting that they named radios as shape tokens. This is like much more better naming just like just a radius, right? So I just want to highlight that. Okay, let's dive deeper into their components. I feel like we spoke a lot about the documentation. Let's just quickly go through a couple more things that they have. They also have a storybook, but in the storybook, they don't have docs at all. It's empty. And I guess the reason why is because they are using storybook just to test components, but not actually to document things. The whole documentation lives within the documentation website. So this is interesting how they decided not to use storybook functionality for documentation, but have it as a part of the main website. Let's move to the next topic that we have. I will copy things from our secret board, and we can start with inspect and reflect activity, right? So are all the pages that you will able to see when it comes to eBay as a product. So we took some screenshots, and also you will able to see that there is a homepage. They have account settings. They have other things around like profile management and communications. eBay is a large company, right? And sometimes some departments, some teams might have legacy code. So for example, for the sellers, from sellers experience, when you go into this link, you will see like a little bit different interface, and that's okay. Like making those changes takes years. So that's why some of the experiences are not updated yet, but I'm sure with this like huge movement and the level of quality, I'm sure every team would love to switch to the new design system, but it just takes a lot of time, and not all the teams might have budget for refactoring. So let's talk about that in a second, right? Jeremy, do you have any interesting practices when it comes to if you see within the Disney, for example, there is a specific product that is very legacy, right? But it's not following all the guidelines. What will be your next steps here? Would you reach out to them, do some interviews, maybe invite them to the open hours, maybe do the demo of your design system and say how more accessible your product will be if you will start following and more consistent it will be? How do you deal with some teams that are still on the legacy code side and they don't follow the design system guidelines for now?
that's a great question. And it's definitely tough based on different orgs and that kind of thing. But like my practice is very similar to what we've done here is like really do that audit and kind of compare and contrast what maybe like the primary screens versus ones that maybe like the settings page is not as high traffic, but still very important, and aligning in that sense. If it's a lot of legacy things that maybe not, if it's a technical obstacle or things like that, then that's a really clear indication of bringing all the stakeholders in a room and it's like, hey, how can we make this work? And not full sweep. It's like that iterative process of like, hey, can it be the button? Can it be a list item? Can it be maybe colors and accessibility? And really prioritize that. But it starts with a conversation and building that relationship to the ideal state is always kind of tough. But if we're working towards that together, I think that's really when the collaboration happens. And it gets really fun with that because from a system standpoint, like if we have that easy button and everything is accessible, everything is flexible and works for all use cases, that's what we're trying to do, but it's not going to be overnight. And so starting those conversations early and often is key, but also understanding business requirements and business needs come first as well. So I like to call it Trojan horsing projects. Maybe we're working on the button anyways. How about that or another pattern? Can we also include that in the scope and try to help each other kind of get to that end goal that we hope to achieve?
Love it, love it. This is really good. I feel like when it comes to the design system, there are like two main roadmaps, right? The first one, when it comes to the delivery of new components, new updates, and everything else. But the second one is very important when it comes to the distribution and change management, is the actual adoption plan, right? Maybe having all the teams, all the products within the organization, and having a status like if they are onboarding, if there are detractors, they tried and then left. If there are strong adopters or design system, having this kind of roadmap of the change plan, of adoption plan, might also be helpful. And by doing this authorizations, the audits, right, we can highlight, okay, like there is a huge opportunity here for the seller's dashboard. They are using the legacy code. Let's add them and let's plan the time when we will start the discussions, do the inventory sessions with them and propose solutions and work on that together. Any other thoughts? Robin, do you have any thoughts on that part?
Yeah, I agree with what Jeremy said, and I like the Trojan horse example. Maybe one thing I would add is you probably also want to look when you have different teams working on different sections, you probably also want to see, is it in their strategy to even adopt the system? Is there like, because it's different in every company, not every team or company has a mandate. So you probably want to onboard first the teams that have in their strategy the willingness to adopt the system. I guess if you have maybe 10, 15 internal teams, you cannot really, as a small design system team, you cannot support them all at the same time. So I like the Trojan horse idea of if you have a team that is very willing to adopt the new standard of the system, to work with them first, creating a roadmap, and maybe start with an enthusiastic team that wants to switch to the new version of the system. Maybe they are going through a redesign of their parts, and that you can use as an example for other teams. You probably want to have a roadmap of these teams in order to not be burned out as a design system team and helping 15 teams at the same time. Or you might have a team that is looking to integrate like maybe one specific component, like they have need for a card, just one component. So there is like more of a micro adoption in that sense, or maybe even just tokens. There can be layers of it, right? Like you don't have to update the whole application at once. Maybe a team can just adopt the tokens, or maybe a team can start adopting two components and then slowly start switching component by component. So I think the adoption part can be approached in many different ways, at different pace as well.
Yeah, I think every company has legacy code. I have done this in every single company that I have worked for. And I think the key is not to really enforce it or being like the design system police. But I think the key is to show those teams the design system actually makes their life easier. Like we can show them what they gain. They will gain accessibility built in or consistency across all the experience, faster updates. I mean, there's all of these good things about the design systems. But I think one thing that I have learned is that starting small is really good. So, like, starting with high impact things like tokens or core components and giving them migration parts. So, like, focusing on the small things and then going into high traffic components like buttons or forms or drop down. And I think like if you tell a team to like rebuild everything from scratch or like at once, I think that's very overwhelming, and I think that's when we get pushed back.
Love it, love it, love it. So, just a quick summary of our discussions related to how to deal with the legacy code is having not only design system roadmap, but also adoption plan, right? And planning all those things, doing the audit, as Jeremy mentioned, and understanding which kind of products, which kind of teams we would like to work with next week, next month, next quarter. And yes, I really like the Robin and Achela. Your idea is that people can start small. They can start with tokens and then focus on more foundational components. One of the value that they have is better performance and accessibility compliance and consistency across the experience, right? So great. Let's move to the next one. Let's actually start the discussions around the components that they have. So let me start importing things here. We can start with, for example, should we start with buttons?
Yay.
Sure.
Okay, let's start simple.
Yeah. Simple.
Let me go through their documentation, right? Let's go into the buttons. And here are the component variations that we were able to find when it comes to buttons. Let me just pull it right here. First of all, they have multiple libraries, right? They have 3 main libraries. And in some cases, if you will go into the code preview here that was captured from the browser, you will able to see some interesting insights around like, is this coming from React library or something else, right? For example, for this button, the search button on the homepage, that is the main one, when you will go into the ebay.com website, you will see that on the top. It's actually coming from Marco design system, not the React design system. As you can see here, they have Marco, Skin, and React libraries. And for the React, they have 2 of them. It's called eBay button and eBay CTA button. And for the Marco, let's check the Marco because this is the one that they are using within the web. I feel like this is actually, is that a web component? It's not a React.
No, yeah, you're right. I think that's the web. And yeah, I'm looking at the CTA button page, and they mentioned that Skin, Marco, and React are not fully done. Like you have the status as still in progress. So I think maybe that's also one of the reasons we see different implementations across the website because they're still in progress. So I guess that means it's not, or it's probably not to be found online.
Mm-hmm. Love it. So let's start. For example, we are working with an eBay design system, and we can see that, okay, like we found a couple more buttons, and it looks like there are 3 main different styles here, and also different states. And I would love to hear your thoughts. Like, what is your thinking process here when you see this kind of details, right? First of all, I feel like there is like different variations of the size, right? So let's go into the buttons and see if they have variations on the size. So looks like they don't, but like, would you start thinking of adding this specific variation into your design system documentation? Or when it comes to states, like if it's not documented within the design system documentation yet, what will be your next steps here? So let's play this game when we are trying to think that we are a part of eBay design system and we see this kind of opportunity areas. What will be your first steps?
Yeah, it's like obviously heavy lift, right? So seeing this stuff and we can comment on it, but not understanding the roadmap and all the different things, it's hard to really plan it out. But one of the things that comes to mind for me is that because we know that the product is on web as well as mobile, you know, almost specs within the documentation might be helpful for folks just to kind of understand the differences. As a, predominantly I've worked on all the platforms, but like I know folks really design with one platform in mind. So they're intentionally coming to the documentation or the resources for that thing. And if it's not aligned to what they're used to, then they can't use it. But I know that within the playbook, they have different I forget which component actually do have specs, which is really cool, calling out padding and things like that. And so having that within here as well, and maybe they're going to get to us later on, would be helpful so that as a web, if I'm working on web as a designer or an engineer, you have kind of like your space. So, okay, I'm actually aligning to this. Cool. It's accurate. And that's the tough aspect of this playbook is it's supposed to be for all audiences. So how much is too much information and what is not enough, right? And everybody has an opinion. But I think looking at just the iterative aspect that we talked about before, these are great just to see side by side and like, oh, the search button isn't up to spec yet. When can we allocate that time to do that work, to get it across the consistency aspect? So I think it's a really good start in terms of seeing all these things, but whether the specs were going to be important or other things that folks would like to see, I think that's a really good conversation starter to get more information or what they value the most to help them move that conversation forward.
Love it. My favorite insight from your comment is that we need to think about different platforms as well, right? When it comes to like this general documentation. And I really like your thought around we shouldn't document too much. And what I really appreciate about the eBay's playbook is that there are a lot, like there's like a lot of visual materials, not too much text. And this helps me quickly understand and digest all the information. So maybe in the future, having some kind of drop down where we're able to switch between platforms like web, mobile, email, and I will able to see how they are different from each other and why they are different from each other. That will be great. And yeah, also having somewhere maybe here at the bottom showing the examples of where exactly those components are being used in the product and maybe some comments around, for example, for the search, the size is different or broken, we need to fix that. How do you capture those deviations or opportunity areas? Do you usually create a Jira ticket or do you usually create a screenshot of the product that you want to update and just adding a comment and tagging your product managers, designers, engineers, saying the search button is off, we need to fix that? How do you track those action items?
Well, I think,
I can talk.
go ahead, Sheila.
Yeah, I think that's something that happens all the time. As a design system designers, we notice the details that no one else does. And if we don't do that, then probably other people are not going to do it. So you mentioned, do you do links or do you just talk to people? Everything. I think I do like everything because if you don't write the thing that you're inspecting or the thing that you want to change, if you don't write a Jira ticket, if you don't share that with your team or with the PMs and all, nothing is going to happen. I think your job as a design system designer is find these things and share them with the correct teams and take an action on it because that's your job. No one else is going to notice those things.
Robin, you had a thought?
Yeah, well, I have a slightly different take. I agree that if you work in a design system team, you will notice immediately that that search button, for example, is not the one you have on the site. But I think it's very hard to place the responsibility of this work on the design system team because the system team is usually small. And if you have a big company, there's no way such a small team can go through all the flows and all the products and point out where you have issues. So I would say the responsibility of this is still on the product team. And of course, if the design system team notices something, that is a great start of conversation potentially. One thing I also know some teams have done is to have linters. So actually, that's something the design system team provide to product teams, linters, both in Figma or in code, like just tools to be able to help teams identify when a component is not linked to the design system. If a component looks similar, but it's not from the system. So I think that that's something some system teams have provided as tools to automate that. Because again, to not automate that means going through all screens and it's quite hard. So yeah, I think that there are different processes, but I would say, in my opinion, the responsibility of this is still on the product team because they are responsible for using the correct components or owning the deviations in that case.
Love it, love it. And I really like the way how they have this section called choosing a button, where they are explaining when exactly you need to select specific things. They are creating flowcharts, helping you to make a decision which components to use. Like if you have very important things to share. For example, please use CTA button, right? And it should be only one per page or something like that. Do you believe in the future there will be some kind of AI that you can ask, okay, like here's my screen, which button should I use? Or it's too much?
100%.
I remember at Lyft, I remember creating all those flowcharts, and a lot of times as a systems person, like I won't say we're adopting these things, but we didn't create those things. Maybe the original one was another designer. They may or may not be at the company anymore. And so trying to get all that context to understand when they use a certain thing in the ecosystem of all the components, that's really tough to kind of and we're not content designers. Like we're not good with words. We're more visual, but trying to explain it is always a hard job, but it's part of our list of things that we are responsible for. And I like what Robin mentioned about putting the onus on those product teams who own that surface. Like we can definitely point it out and support it where we can. I think the biggest thing for me when I saw that for the first time, that search on that page was like, was it something that we didn't create the button to be flexible enough? And if it's a yes, then we got something to work on. If no, then it's like, hey, let's dig into this. Why isn't this working? Is it within the code? Is it within some of the parameters that we didn't even consider? Like that to me is really good feedback on like, is the system working? I believe it needs to enhance every so often just because the product is enhancing. But at the end of the day, I think it's a partnership. But Robin's definitely right. Like I'm the type of person who'll say yes to things, but then there's so many irons in the fire, and we need some support from the product teams to be able to move that forward.
Love it.
Yeah, and I think
Let's
AI tools can help. I think AI tools can help with that. Like design system teams can and probably will use AI to create tools to support teams for all these things, like review screens, answer questions about documentation, helping choosing components, variants. I think that's something definitely I see in the future because it scales very well. You build the AI knowledge base once, and then every team can use it.
love it.
And I agree, like having just like visuals to help designers understand when to use a component is it's amazing. I have referenced those like three charts that you were talking about like a lot because it's like a really great opportunity to help designers, decide what to use and what not. I think the more visuals we have into the documentation, the better, because when we have documentation that is like 10 pages long, no one is going to read it and they're just going to use whatever they think is the right component.
I agree. There are some interesting insights that we can also pull from the code preview. Looks like there are, and again, this is always happens within large organizations where there is like not one, there's like multiple design systems at the same time. And you can see some interesting highlights that, for example, the first one is Marco. This is like coming from the design system itself, but they also have something else called STR, as you can see here, the abbreviation. Usually this is coming from the name of the design system. So maybe they have something like STR design system, or maybe this is more product specific classes that they are using. And also another interesting thing is they have this data eBay UI. I feel like this is the place where they are tracking the adoption of the design system. You can actually do that the same thing with Infa, and it will tell you the adoption per page. What's your adoption of your design system within this specific page directly in the browser? But this is great that they added this kind of additional parameters that will help them to track if things on the production, not in code or not in design, but actually in production, are available there for the end user. Great. So let's move to the next one.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the buttons, just very like a thing that I noticed that I really like. I added this screenshot of like their link, and I like that they draw a really clear line between text links and buttons, so that links go somewhere and buttons do something. It might sound obvious for us or other people, but you might be surprised how many designers or systems blur that line, and that actually creates usability issues or accessibility issues. So I think documenting that and having a clear stance on that is really great.
Love it, love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Let's move to the next one, the search bars. So this is the examples that I was able to find across the products. So the first one is, of course, coming from the homepage. This is the main search bar. And of course, like in some cases, the product specific, and we can talk about that, right? So the first one is coming from the homepage. The second one is coming from purchase. So, and I guess this is like completely different search bar. It's not searching across the web. It searches locally within your current page. So if you have a list of orders, I believe it can just search on the page, more like a filtering. The second one is search for items inside your product, inside your profile. You can, I guess maybe that's the one that you can just start typing and we'll just filter out the list that you have already, but a little bit different behavior here. So very interesting case. Like how do you manage those kind of different behaviors, right? The search bar could look visually the same, but it has completely different behavior behind the scenes, right? How do you manage that?
Yeah, I think maybe one of the answers is in the search field component that they have, where we can see the skin Marco is not yet finished and React is still in progress. And actually, what I wonder is if we look at the examples we found on production, if that was one of the reasons why in the eBay playbook, then they are working on a search field component. And I wonder if also this initiative of eBay playbook basically meant that the design system team did a curation of an audit of all the products, and in this case looked at all search input fields, and they were like, okay, let's try to consolidate them in and provide one component, which is what we see in the documentation, but it's not finished yet, so maybe that's why we don't see it on production. So I wonder if that's also one sign of the design system team thinking, hey, we have all these teams creating their own search input fields, let's try to consolidate them.
I agree.
The bread and butter of a systems team, right? To understand what are everyone doing within the features, and making it more efficient, have a single component, consistent component, but it's the onus on the team to ensure it's flexible for all those different use cases that you put up here for like understanding search for anything versus searching your orders versus the charity. That component needs to flex and be able to accomplish the things that the user needs to accomplish. So I can see this just like getting stakeholders in the room, saying, okay, what's the UI that, keep it consistent, and can it flex to all these different use cases? And iteratively, maybe, working through those teams and getting that user data to be like, hey, did this change things? Are they unable to do what they need to do? And then go from there.
Love it. But yeah, still like a design system, I feel like this is like really good examples of how you can actually push the change so hard because like the product has a lot of legacy things, right? And I feel like another interesting enabler for the design system, by making it open source, there's more attention to your playbook design system, right? And then some products who are not ready to adopt, maybe they can see that the power of the design system, right? And they might start more willingly, they will start more adopting that. There is a comment on the chat, so let me just quickly copy and paste that. But having the design system publicly available and making it available to everyone, this is like a good first step, as Jeremy and Robin and Jella you mentioned. Love it. Dustin asked the question, can you please reference the screenshot you mentioned specifically for difference between usage of text and peels, please?
I put it here if someone follows me, yes.
Oh, thank you. So let me just spotlight myself here.
And that's on the button page. The link is the last variant of the button.
I know that we are out of time. We have more components to cover, but the recording will be available on YouTube. But I wanted to give a couple minutes for everyone to share what is their main highlight of the session. Bella, we can start with you. What is your main highlight of our discussions? And this level of complexity of eBay as an organization, having all those different products, different teams, but still pushing forward for this new, better design language and having design system publicly available. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I really like that they're setting the bar really high and like that they're setting a trend for all other design systems to follow. It's like a really nice example and yeah, an example to follow.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, they're pushing the limits of design systems for sure. Robin?
Yeah, and then the accessibility part, I just love it. that it's not like a checkbox list for them. It's just in there, and especially for a big company that's like it has a huge impact for all users.
Robin?
Yeah, I agree with what Sheila said. And I think for me, one big takeaway is the way eBay is, and the design system team specifically of eBay is marketing themselves with this website. That's something that the community has to try to do more. Of course, this is a lot of work. Like what they did, it's obviously a lot of work. It's not always possible if you have a small team. I don't know how big their team is, but can guess it's more than 3 people looking at the website. But that is definitely something that will help also with leadership. I guess they show this is not just for, it's also for like the leadership people that might not be involved with the digital, like they're not maybe not consumers, but they're like head offs and directors, and this is like a marketing tool for them as well to show, hey, this is not just a little library. It's like it's more, it's strategic, it's important, and like the way they market themselves basically. And I think that could be something to take away from.
Love it. Thank you.
Jella and Robin mentioned some of the things I would like to say, but the biggest thing for me is that this is open source for us to look at it and gain inspiration. A lot of companies, like I still reference Material and Polaris and Human Interface Guidelines. And this is when this launched, it was a favorite of mine in my browser just to be like, what are they doing? And how do I kind of emulate this within my work? And so it's super hard, like obviously the hard work to put it together, but to have it kind of public is tough because feedback is sometimes hard. But I really give kudos to the folks who worked on this to push this systems like conversation a little bit more to like what Robin mentioned, more strategic, more marketing, more like, hey, this is actually very important and valuable. Like we want to showcase them. And it might be that, again, 4 or 5 year plan to get the entire product aligned, but like there's a roadmap, there's a playbook that they can follow. And that's amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like this new design direction that is coming out of Evo Design System, it's a huge refresh, right? And we can see that they are adopting, and that takes years to adopt everything. So, but I really like the way how they promote and like making it open, available for everyone, and like the level of craft is top of the line. So I really admire this Evo Design System. It's really a lot of work. Thank you very much for joining. Please follow or connect with our speakers if you want to learn more about design system. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to them. And if you want to hear more of this kind of discussions, we are doing on the next week, we are doing that for the Dropbox design system. So see you there. Thank you very much for joining.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please stay